we're gonna cover hip cars. So as we've done with every other version of our cars, we've slowly worked on building more tension, slowly worked on isolating the joints. The hardest two joints I find for people to isolate outside of spine, because spine is very, very challenging, are hips and shoulders. We do so much with our hips and shoulders, but our bodies are also really, really good at compensating for not having hips or shoulders. Usually that comes from actually moving your spine too much, which is why in a lot of these programs, we've paired spine with hip and shoulder so that you get really in tune with where your spine is before you try to use shoulders and hips. Or it gives you a lot of feedback when you use shoulders and hips because you're already more aware of your spine. So what we're gonna do now is focus on isolating our hip. With that, I've got two supports here. Broomsticks work. You want something that's gonna provide a little bit of stability. So a chair, a post, something that helps you so that you're not teeter-tottering while you're trying to balance. So from here, we're bringing that foot across, right? We're gonna go up into a hacky sack position, as much external rotation, which is ankle bone going up, as we possibly can, and as much hip flexion, which is knee going towards our chest, as much as possible. Our goal is to do this without shifting forward, okay? Or hiking the hip to accomplish that. So from here, we're opening the door as far as we can before internally rotating, which is pushing our ankle bone up towards the ceiling, as high as possible. As we bring that hip back and extend, we line those legs back up, come forward just a tiny bit, just enough so that when you extend again, you feel that hip fire up. Raise that knee as high as you can. This spot, uncomfortable. That's okay, that's what it's supposed to be. So from here, we're bringing it around and back in. So to build more tension and do this, we're planting, we're squeezing quad and glute. We're trapping a little bit of air in our core, and then we've got these, which means we're punching these down through the floor. We're stabbing down and squeezing these with everything we've got if we want to go higher than probably a 5 or a 6. So for the purpose of this, we're crossing that leg over. We're already building tension everywhere. We've already trapped air. As much external rotation as we can, as much hip flexion, open the door. From here, internally rotating, raising that ankle bone up. Try to keep the knee as high as you can without doing this. We're not doing this because that is not isolating the hip. Your goal is to move, in this case, your right hip and only your right hip. Bring it around, come back. I'll show you from the side as well. As you go through this range of motion, opening up, here, this is the spot that's most difficult, as people will try to go away from kind of that uncomfortable, crampy sensation, and they'll try to hike the hip. I want you to fight that as hard as you can as you bring that leg back in. Your legs will be tired after this. So keeping that pelvis right under your rib cage at all times. That's going to be the key to making sure that we're not doing all kinds of craziness with our other leg, or our hip, or our spine, right? We want just pure hip. If, as you're doing this, it kind of comes back to here, it's not a big deal. You'll get there eventually. You'll notice that my left has a fair bit range of motion bigger than my right. It's not a problem inherently, unless whatever your sport is requires you to have perfectly symmetrical hips. What we want to avoid is closing angle joint pain. Just like every other time we've covered this, I don't want anything on the front side of the hip in terms of pinchy sensation. If you feel like you're running out of room here, back off just a little bit, okay? If you feel like as soon as you bring this, you've got kind of a hip crease sensation, back off. And if your cars look like this for the time being, then that's what your hip cars look like for the time being. By week 4, we'll start to introduce how to open up those ranges of motion. Balls. Oh. Cut. By week 5, we're going to introduce how to open up and expand this range of motion and potentially get rid of some of those pinchy sensations. I will say though, if it's something that's painful, go see a physical therapist, get it assessed, make sure there's nothing structurally wrong with your hip. If it's just a little like, oh, I feel like I'm kind of running out of room, the other thing you can do is book an assessment with me. I'm happy to take a look at your hip. We'll do our functional range assessment and we'll just see exactly where your movement limitations are. Do you have external rotation? Do you have internal rotation? If you don't have access to both of those, we've got work to do. And that'll help a ton in getting rid of some of that pinchy sensation. Thank you for watching.